Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Futurist Letters Show. This is the Alt-Lit and Litstack podcast of Substack, also streaming on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Music if you add it through RSS. We've got video, we've got audio, we've got guests, and we've got co-hosts. It's a very exciting season coming up. We're trying to make it punchy, we're trying to keep it relevant. So this is going to be a little bit of an experiment in wall-to-wall literary drama, reflection, the who's who and the what's what of what's going on. And hopefully if you're in the loop, you'll find it interesting. If you're not in the loop, you will become in the loop, and we'll just have to see how it goes. With me today, I'm Cairo Smith, by the way, is my lovely co-host, Lillian Wang-Solonic. Hi, Lillian. How are you?
Hey, Cairo. Doing good.
Excellent. Excellent. We have got you, listener, covered coast to coast. Futurist Letters is based in lovely sunny Los Angeles, and we have got Lillian holding it down in the DC metro area. Is that right?
That's right. It is sunny and 82 here, too, so
Wow,
feeling
look at
good.
that. I feel like it was just freezing. So,
Yeah,
after
the
every breeze,
ice just melted, and now it's summer.
perfect time to be starting the show. Well, our whole thing is make it new and make it fast here for season 2, so I think we'll just jump in. I do want to say that Lillian, in addition to being an excellent literary podcast host and author, also writes essays for your pleasure at the Lillian Review of Books, which is her Substack. Lillian, tell us a little bit about what we can find if we go there.
I guess I would say it's an eclectic mix of some fiction. Some of my fiction is on there, and essays on science fiction, classic science fiction, new wave, sci-fi, and classic literature, especially Jewish literature. Um, And yeah, my most recent is the long-delayed review of Ulysses.
Yes,
So
yes. Lillian has been sort of live noting her Ulysses saga, and I think as a result, this essay was very anticipated. And as someone who has started but not finished Ulysses, which might be many of you, I very much enjoyed her take. So do check that out. And the way this is going to work is we're just going to bop through a few different segments, and hopefully at least one will be to your interest. We're also going to have guests coming on, not for a whole, hour and a half, tell us your whole life story, just for more of a, 15 to 25 minute let's talk about what's going on this week. So, that said, I'm sure there will be some surprises, and I think we should just jump in.
sounds good.
So, first up, we want to talk a little about Substack, the platform. Substack powers the Futurist Letters show and Futurist Letters, the journal. Lillian, how are you feeling about how Substack, the platform, has been going the past few months?
I feel like as a user, it seems like it's going okay for now. There are some possible warning signs. There was a recent Polymarket integration, which doesn't really make sense to me. I've clicked around. I don't really understand what the use case for it is. There was a lot of doom and gloom about that, like, oh, they're selling out or something like that. But I after giving it, a small amount of thought, I think it's actually a good thing because it means that they're exploring uh ways to monetize that are not ads. And I think eventually ads are going to come and it'll make everything terrible. Just, scrolling through, it'll just make it the same as Twitter or Instagram or, anything else that's where you just have dozens of ads every time you open the app or the website. But I think that this sort of thing at least delays that. And ultimately, I mean, it's not impacting my use of the platform. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think as far as like a social ill, Polymarket is like pretty up there. I say that as someone who was like a Polymarket degen at a certain point. Maybe I just got like one-shotted by it, and so now I'm like bitter, because I like have to, abstain. But I actually agree with you that I don't think it's like a five alarm problem for the platform. It's hard for me to evaluate without knowing what the details of the deal were. Like, obviously, if Polymarket gave Substack like $1 bajillion, then maybe like Polymarket is the sucker, and Substack was like, yeah, sure, we'll add like a widget. But like, if it's like a slimmer deal, the thing is, if you look at like all the big, like highest earning Substack blogs, it's like basically people giving like stock tips or like political takes. Like, those are the big movers. And so I feel like there is a huge like economically big part of Substack for whom this is probably a really great integration, because it's just like people who want to be like gambling on world events, even if like to lit stack it feels very random. I don't know. This is actually something I've wondered, is like, in the scheme of things, like how influential is like quote lit stack or whatever, like people who do fiction and essays in the Substack ecosystem. Like, I see Chris Best, I see Hamish Mackenzie around a lot on Notes, and that kind of makes me feel like, oh, like we're like the main characters, we're like hanging out with the professor. But like, maybe that's not true at all. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I saw Chris Best posting about Cormac McCarthy today,
Yeah.
so I definitely feel like, no, I guess I'm not like looking at what all, they're posting on a regular basis, but it does feel like for the size of our little corner of Substack, it's we at least, have the ear
We
of
definitely
the
have the
dear
ear.
leaders.
We definitely do. Yeah, I mean, you go on Notes, it kind of feels like there's 100 people into lit, and then, like the owners, but maybe we've just been like really carefully sorted into like an algorithmic bubble. I don't know. Um,
Yeah, well, I think that that is true. Um, and I know we can't be the big money makers, even the top people. Although I do think if like George Saunders, who is I think the top um, literary Substacker, if he like wanted something from Substack, I feel like they would listen to him.
I mean, I feel like I got a feature. It was just a quality of life thing, but I made like a rage post about when you sorted by top, like it stopped filtering by category. It just showed you essays and fiction together. And I was like, can you guys please fix this? And what's funny is I had emailed like the support email a year prior about it, nothing. And then like crashing out on the timeline got it fixed within a day. So squeaky wheel incentives, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like Substack is going well as a platform. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. Did you read Sam Chris's recent essay about like Empire as a manic episode?
No.
Ah, it was good. It was, I forget who called him like a good prose stylist, but the style was good. And it kind of makes me think about the cycle of social media platforms as like the cycle of Empire, Like, it sort of starts small, it gets really good, it sells out, and then it sort of becomes a carcass. I don't know. Maybe it's not inevitable, but it probably is.
It's like uh the wooden slippers going up the stairs and the silk slippers going down the stairs kind of thing.
I don't know that.
I don't know. Something I heard Dan Carlin say.
Well,
I
he's
forget who
pretty
he was
smart too.
quoting.
Yeah, probably. But I think if we're setting like DEF CONs, I think for DEF CON, like higher numbers are lower danger. So this would be like a DEF CON 5.
Okay. I think that's the highest. That's
Are
like
the
the
higher
least.
numbers more
No,
dangerous?
no, 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 no. I mean, but I think it only goes up to 5. So you're saying it's like
The
we're
lowest
business as
danger.
usual. Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I would say but we'll check back on our Substack DEF CON, I think, here and there. So Vulture ran a piece recently that touched on the alt lit and I guess remnants of Dimes Square aftermath space, which is obviously a lot of where this show brushes up against with its guests. They ran a piece by a fairly young, um, up and coming author named Malavika Kannan, and she was reviewing Lost Lambs by Madeline Cash, and didn't throw a whole lot of praise or scorn at the prose, but spent a lot of time talking about sort of the cultural project that she sees Madeline Cash and her former co-founder Honor Levy as being participants in. And listener, if you're interested, you can go find that. Just search Vulture Lost Lambs. You can get it for free, I believe. But Lillian, I'm curious to know what your thoughts were on this piece.
Yeah, so I haven't read any of the books that are mentioned in the article, so just I feel like I'm not coming from a very informed place other than being sort of aware of the discourse around these books and authors and the scene. I did think it was it felt like, so Kanan's piece felt like it was um, sort of like time warped from, I don't know, 2018 or something. And so, but I think that I did not have um, as strong a negative reaction as you did. I think that there was something about the way that she was writing that seemed to have triggered you. And I think, partly I think maybe I'm just a little bit more woke than you are. But I do feel like there's nothing that wrong with what she's saying, even if I find it, I don't know. I feel like there is something aesthetically displeasing about the way that she said it.
Yeah, I think, and I want to say I'm not like rabidly against this article or even like her thesis about whatever the Dime Square project was. I do think that, yes, as you said, I feel like I was reading the piece and the way it was written, I was like right back in college, sort of having to put aside all the insinuation and just focus on the claims. And what's funny is my takeaway was that a lot of the sort of uh, snide pokes at Cash and Levy and their ilk are they were really roundabout. They weren't very direct. Things like their contributor list seems to be allergic to melanin was the phrase that I posted, and you, Lillian, sort of walked me back on that and said, that's not how I would put it, but I don't think that it's that terrible of a thing to say. I think really though what I started engaging with this piece was that she defines woke at some point, and it's actually very interesting to see someone who just like fully stands by everything from like the high watermark of social justice around the turn of the decade at a time when so many people are like backpedaling. And she basically said like woke, defined as more opportunities for women, people of color, and queers, is essentially what she said. And, I thought about that and I was like, yeah, sure, I guess so. And the question is like, is this zero sum? Is this negative sum? Is this positive sum, right? Like, there were all those Instagram posts about like, oh, we're just baking a bigger pie. Like you're not losing anything was the pitch. And then I think maybe it's more of this redistributionist thing at some point, like, yeah, we're getting our portion of the pie and we're not even going to say we're making a bigger one at this point. I don't know, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I did note that her definition of wokeness. I thought that was interesting because she was saying, she defined wokeness in the context of saying like wokeness is the boogeyman for Dime Square and these like sort of quasi right wing literary people. But then her definition of wokeness, I think, is very different from how they would define it. So just already it was like she's not reading these writers on their own terms. When I feel like it's much harder to say I oppose increasing opportunities for marginalized people. It's like who.
Yeah, I also think there's maybe sort of specifically in New York and specifically um like a female oriented aspect that leads one to say, oh, these are like rich white straight women. Because I feel like for me being in LA, when I go to any kind of alt lit event that's like at all male, like not only is everyone like kind of brown, but also like everyone's like pretty gay, you know. So I don't know, maybe it's just different worlds. But
I
maybe
mean,
that is true of the whole cash levy scene. In a way, I'm sort of looking at it from across the country, you know, just sort of viewing through a kaleidoscope.
yeah, well, I mean, maybe wokeness worked in LA then. I guess is that.
Maybe it did. I don't know. Maybe it did. Maybe we're getting new syntheses of ideologies that you couldn't even have imagined. But anyway, this article, the reason I wanted to talk about it was because it kicked up a bit of discourse on Substack, and specifically Jacob Savage wrote a note responding to it, where he basically specifically was mad about her mention of Atessa Moshfegh, um, whom Kanan only describes as uh, being notorious for her fat phobia and use of the R word, which I did hear again, time warp from 2018. I remember this discourse, but I don't know. Maybe we're just like quibbling over the definition of notorious. It's just kind of funny. I don't know. Did that strike you as a funny way to put it?
Okay, so again, I have not read Atessa Moshfegh, so but somehow I knew that her protagonist in My Year of Rest and Relaxation was really skinny. So I don't know, maybe that is notoriety then, if I have received um that characterization of her work.
I don't know. I almost wonder if the dichotomy here is like between people who want to be sort of like writing a better tomorrow into existence with their work versus people who are like sort of writing to get their demons out. Like in her characterization of Cash's book, like there's a lot of whatever problematic views or politics, but like the characters are like struggling or tortured with it almost, you know? Like it's like the author is almost trying to exorcise a part of themselves through the work, successfully or unsuccessfully. Maybe that's too generous a reading. I do think it's interesting that um, for all the talk of alt lit or Dime Square being like conservative aligned, it really is the stereotype of like seeking the progressive validation or like the validation of the liberal frame, you know? Like I think one reason people like Jacob Savage or even people like me like get so mad is because it's like, hey, you know, I don't want to be the bad guy in your world just for doing this, you know, or being this way or whatever, you know, like it's a very reflexive and if you really didn't care about their worldview at all, presumably you wouldn't be so hurt, you know?
Yeah. Um I think one thing that pulls people towards the right is just because it's more it's a bummer to hang out with people who think that you suck and are evil. And so it's more fun to like be the most progressive person in the room. Um,
Yeah,
and
I
I
would
think
agree with that. That's a very interesting point. I wouldn't have said it that way, but it makes sense. And that creates an interesting incentive structure because then it's like you get a mix of people who enjoy being the worst person in the room and people who enjoy being the best, strictly relatively, you know, kind of all in a stew, right?
yeah. I mean, it definitely it seems like the dime square milieu is sort of delighting in baiting these people who are a little bit left of them who they see as holding the power in and cultural capital.
Yeah. And it shows how much, like, I don't know when this started, but it's been true as long as I've been alive that cultural, like, righteousness flows from, like, a sense of being aggrieved, you know, or being, like, an upstart against an institution, at least in America, you know? Like, I really see Kanan and these Dime Square girls as being two sides of the same coin. They're basically both calling the other bad, but in this very elliptical way, with sort of a lot of these out the side the mouth statements, and they're both like really interested in painting the other one as like the big dog, you know? Maybe that's just the nature of being an alt-lit. You want to be the transgressive, but I don't know. It's a multipolar world, as they say. Well, just to conclude on that, I did make my own post specifically about the allergic to melanin thing, getting a little up in arms, and to her great credit, Malavika Kanan replied to me. She said, regarding their contributor list being allergic to melanin, she said, quote, "It's not evidence of discrimination. I don't want to write for Forever Mag. Don't worry. Just a quiet observation of who can / wants to hang with whom, heart, exclamation mark." Which is a very sweet, very sort of recent college grad thing to say. I take it as an olive branch, even if it's like a faint retreat. And yeah, she's right that there is some signal there. I think the question is just like, how much do you want to get at in someone else's business? And that's a personal choice.
Yeah, I kind of wish that she had. I mean, I thought it was a nice response, but I kind of wish she had not said that it's not evidence of discrimination, because I don't know. My point was like, it can be evidence of discrimination, and like, if I don't know, if you're going to claim that all of these people are who are publishing in this new magazine are white, and that they also have expressed reactionary beliefs in other places, like I don't know, why not like stand by the claim, like, yeah, this seems like, it's not beyond, reasonable doubt, whatever, but it's like, I guess I wouldn't be surprised if these people who are being characterized in this way were also a little racist. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
if
No, that makes sense. And I think I should have said sufficient. And even then, sufficient, I'm kind of fighting a straw man because she presented it as one piece in a whole bouquet of insinuations. So ultimately, we'll see. I think that the way to clear out all this bad air is for people to be vocal and sincere about what they believe, whatever that is. I certainly have enjoyed learning to do that, but I think it's easy when you're not going to face like extreme social rancor for those beliefs. So if the dime square ladies do feel the need to conceal themselves, well, then maybe we end up in a situation like this. I don't know. Moving on, there was another little bit of discourse that I want to touch on. There was a essay about David Foster Wallace, written by John Gu, the Substacker, and there was also a note by him. The note I'm going to read verbatim for you. The note was, quote, Asian American male literature is the incel novel. Rejection by Tony T. Shortcomings by Adrian Tamine. Incel by ARXon. Asian American female literature is the white boyfriend microaggressions roman. Disorientation by Elaine Chu, Severance by Ling Ma, Real Americans by Rachel Kong, that Rusikui short story making Tue. Okay, well, that kind of gives away my my reveal, which is that we have John Gu in the house. The end of the note was, how accurate are my two propositions? And yes, to discuss this and the David Foster Wallace essay and his new serial novel, John Gu, how are you?
Hello, I'm well. Thank you for having me on here, Cairo
Oh,
and Lillian.
it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Good to meet you. I do want to say the AI is really exceptional. Of your live generating.
Yeah. This is an in joke between me and Substack that this is a deep cut actually, but the joke is that I am not actually a millennial Chinese American guy, but this is just my online persona that I have taken extremely complex pains to maintain, and so that's why this is just AI generated. This is not my real face.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've seen
That
enough
is a joke.
videos
That's
of
just
guys.
to be clear, I'm actually, this is what I, sadly, this is what I actually look like. So
No, hardly. Look at that handsome face. No, I've seen enough videos of guys who look, vaguely like us, turning themselves into, usually e-girls on live video to know that maybe it could happen the other way around. So your identity could still be shrouded in mystery. Lillian, I want to let you take point on the David Foster Wallace side of the discussion, since you read that essay more recently than I did.
Yeah, well, I guess first I want to say it was great essay that sort of takes the occasion of the 30th anniversary edition of Infinite Jest, which sort of inexplicably introduced by Michelle Zauner of Japanese Breakfast. And you go through and talk about its reputation in recent years as being for a certain kind of man, a lit bro, as some say. And yeah, I think I was just looking back on it today, and you've gotten a lot of likes on that one. It seems like it hit a nerve with a lot of
The lip
people.
bros have risen up. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it seemed like it was really rooted in your own love for the book, and I wonder if you I guess wanted to talk about that and sort of how it spoke to you when you first read it, and what yeah, how that idea of who the book is for has changed in your understanding of it.
Yeah, and I think not just love, but sort of genuine admiration for this book. And playing a little bit to type, this is actually, I read this book when I was like in my early 20s. One of the sort of the formative literary experiences that I had in my life. And so I had always sort of like thought, okay, well, this is what literature is. This is a book that came out in '96, around like when I was a kid, but in my lifetime, and had sort of established itself as an instant classic, and sort of deservedly so. I mean, you read it and it's sort of like immediately obvious, okay, this is a book that has something. If for nothing else, then its length and the number of big words that are in it, right? And then, I was aware that not only had it, did I think it was good, but like it had, a very strong reputation among literary critics, including, female literary critics like Zadie Smith and, also, fiction writer, but also Laura Miller. And that was for me the story of Infinite Jest for decades. And then like I got back to the U.S. in the like I want to say late 2010s, around mid 2010s, somewhere around there, and I'd sort of been out of the loop a little bit. And then somehow when I when I got back to the U.S., the character of cultural discourse had shifted in the way that a lot of people are talking about now. There was this sort of like 2010s, for lack of a better word, wokeness era, and then a lot of hot takes from around that time were sort of centered around, I don't know, sort of what I felt like was injecting artificial political issues into not really particularly, cultural objects that didn't really have a lot of political valence or whatever. And then, so David Foster Wallace himself, and then Infinite Jest, it seems to have been affected by this, and that just threw me for a loop. And seeing that this was the context in which the 30th anniversary of Infinite Jest was being sort of released into, and that sort of controversy of Infinite Jest, the novel itself, being associated with a sort of certain kind of problematic man. The very fact that the preface by Zauner just references that seems to reify that. What do you want to go? It reifies that approach towards interpreting the novel. And I was like, wait, let's put the brakes to this. This is not what this novel is about. This book is important for other reasons. It's important in the history of literature, of English language literature. And let's talk about that. And the reason why it might appear to be associated with problematic men, or to be in itself problematic, has to do with some other things that are going on. There's a little bit of I don't know, coincidences that have made it accrete these cultural associations.
Yeah, I definitely I would agree with that. I'm an Infinite Jest super fan. I read it twice. And I read the preface by Michelle Zauner earlier today, and I was aghast. I mean, even though like you had sort of prepared me for it in your post, it was so much worse than I thought, because well, one, she read it for the first time like 2 years ago, and uh for some reason, I guess I don't even want to speculate like what the thought process is, like who thought we need to talk to her, Michelle Zauner, for Infinite Jest. But she says something like Infinite Jest is a rite of passage for lit bros, the way that young literary minded women read Pride and Prejudice and Little Women. I'm like, I really, I think um the thing that bothers me so much about this like self-reinforcing gendered perspective on literature is that like um there is a kernel of truth to like the toxic fandom around Infinite Jest, and like there I think there is a certain kind of what we now call performative man, who likes to display their copy of Infinite Jest as though to say, like, look how smart I am, and how impressive I am that I made it through this very challenging book. When really the most challenging thing about it is that it's long. It's it's an engaging read. It's not like slogging through I don't know, Brothers Karamazov or something. It's written in very colloquial English for much of it. So there is some truth, I think, to the like the fandom sucks, but the book itself is so like wondrous and amazing, and it's like it polarizes women who might otherwise enjoy it to say like, oh no, I'm going to stay away from this because only men like to read challenging books. I don't know. It's this weird infantilization thing that I just I hate.
And that's a question that I wanted to bring to you, Lillian. Which, because we've gone a little bit back and forth on this in the notes on Substack, but I mean, it doesn't, irrespective of whether this is the case, it just should not be the case that somehow difficult fiction, however you want to define difficulty, should be coded as particularly as being male. I do think that maybe that is the case. I mean, a lot of famous, I guess, past century difficult writers are considered to be, a lot of male, what's the word? Okay, a lot of 20th century difficult writers are a lot of writers who are considered to be difficult are male. So you have like, I don't know, Gaddis, Thomas Pynchon. You did that post about what's his name, about Ulysses, James Joyce. Those are difficult, but like those are difficult books and they're by difficult writers. But why would it be the case? What is it about difficulty that it is associated with men as opposed to women in fiction?
I don't know. That's that's a big question. I mean, there is a sense. So I did just write a long post about how Ulysses is annoying because it's intentionally obscure and difficult for the sake of it. And I didn't talk about this so much, but in the post, but I do think there is a gendered aspect to that, where I think that maybe male writers feel like they're permitted or empowered to make more demands on their audiences, versus like women writers who just because like the publication of literature by women is a like historically recent phenomenon. There's a sense that like we need to earn the attention and effort that readers put into what women write. I don't know. I haven't really thought this through too much, and I don't know if that would hold necessarily. But
and I don't. I'm not saying that as like as a demand for an answer, but it is. I think that this is part of my confusion about the Infinite Jest thing. Like, okay, Infinite Jest is a difficult novel. Therefore it's associated with men, and then therefore it's associated with somehow being problematic. And I think that there are two of those. I mean, there's two steps to get to problematic. Either a male-coded novel is problematic, or a difficult novel is male-coded somehow. And so, I have an issue with both steps in that logical sequence. But it's easy for me to say why the problematic to male, the association with male to association with problematic step is wrong. That's an easy thing for me to work with. But the association of difficulty with male is also an association I think is mistaken, and something that a link that I would break in the chain of getting from Infinite Jest to being a problematic word.
Can I throw some possible reasons out for the association, and you guys can tell me if you think I'm off base or not? I mean, so one, it's sort of a chicken and egg thing where you get this male tradition of difficult novels. You end up coding them as male, so boys end up reading them, and then those are the books that imprint. Think about who's read Infinite Jest since it came out. It probably is more skewed male than like the mean piece of popular literature, I would guess. Maybe that's not true. But when you have these stereotypes, certainly there are women in college right now who are going to think, oh, that's a boys' book because of the narrative around it. I almost wonder if tapping someone like Michelle Zauner to write that piece was a way of trying to like break the cycle, if they were like, oh, let's get someone who goes against type and then break this book into the women's demo. And then ironically, the piece sort of ends up reinforcing what maybe they thought it was going to break down. I also do think there's sort of a masculine coded like peacocking tendency, both in reading and writing difficult stuff. For a man to write something difficult, it's sort of a show of his ability. And it's also, the everything novel, as they call it, is like, I'm going to write a history of the whole world through my one book. There's like an arrogance to it that is kind of testosterone driven. And then similarly, like wanting to have read something like that, the cultural associations are there, but I feel like where it gets really toxic is when that bleeds into this like, oh, there's some kind of intellectual capability that is greater, or like more prevalent. People start to internalize that when it's really just like, as I said, sort of the peacocking impulse.
Yeah. So you're thinking something along the lines of like, I can imagine the annoying guy who has read Infinite Jest and looks down his nose at the frivolous women frivolous female readers who have not.
Yeah, and there probably is. I mean, there definitely is such a guy as that, where the stereotype came from. The question is like, it's kind of like, around during the whole social justice craze when they were giving up cultural symbols. I remember like they canceled a run of, I think Nike was going to do like Betsy Ross flag shoes for the 4th of July. And then they canceled it because someone told them like the 13-star flag was like a white supremacist symbol. And it's like, we can't just be giving up on everything important because someone tries to say that it's an extremist symbol. And I would include Infinite Jest in that.
I feel like a better argument is that you're not supposed to turn the flag into articles of clothing, and especially shoes seem like a bad thing to, you're stepping on.
It's going to get dirty and stuff.
Yeah.
Possibly. I do want to make sure we have time to get to the other two things we wanted to cover. So I want to pivot to your note John, which I opened with. Just to recap, you basically said Asian American male literature is the incel novel. Asian American female literature is the white boyfriend microaggressions roman, which I thought was a funny pseudo-German neologism. And you said, how accurate are my two propositions? Now, obviously, you're presenting this just sort of as a discussion without any strong valence.
I want to say this is like at least 50% a joke.
Yes, no, and I took it as at least 50% a joke, and it's very funny. So I guess my question for you is, the part of this that is a witty observation, do you take this as good or bad or neither, or like, what do you make of the fact that this is kind of true?
I will say that from the part of Asian American literature, contemporary Asian American literature that I've skimmed, that I've sort of been aware of, that I've read parts of, and the plots and themes and things like that, the characters, recurring characters and stuff like that. What I see in it is very, very offensive to me, and something it offends my sensibilities, not only as an Asian American, but also more sort of artistically, to see that this is that fiction that sort of hews very closely to this kinds of narratives, or these kinds of themes, or that fit this kind of mold that I've described, is to see that this is the kind of fiction that our community seems to be habitually making and seems to be unable to break out of making. So yes, I think to an extent that there is an incel novel written by Asian American male guys, and then a microaggressions roman written by Asian American female writers, I think that it's just bad. That's not what we should be writing.
Yeah, I guess something that occurred to me was that this pattern seems to be distinctive to millennial Asian American writers. I guess I was thinking of like, I recently read Same Bed, Different Dreams by Ed Park, which is a very Asian American, very Korean American novel, and it is not at all an incel novel, and it seems like it is concerned with being kind of an everything book, like we're talking about with Infinite Jest and in that lineage. And then on the but Ed Park is Gen X, and then on the older Asian American female side, I was thinking of like, Pachinko, this like multi-generational family drama thing, which also sort of tries to zoom out, but I mean, it does deal with like, intergenerational trauma and problems of assimilation and stuff, which I think can be done well, but can also easily, veer into sort of parody of itself.
Does Pachinko, does any part of it take place in the US? I at least tried to read the first part of it, and then I just didn't get very far. But I don't know what actually happens if there's, because I know parts of it are like about the Korean expatriate community in Japan or something like this.
Yeah, I think there's maybe at the end there's like the final generation that's covered. I don't really remember. I read it several years ago. But she is an Asian American writer.
Yeah, and so I do think that this is a sort of exaggerated for effect, and I'm trying to direct the ire at the books that fit that mold rather than the books that fall outside of that. But yeah, I think there are a lot of millennial writers who are writing in this mold. I think what really maybe I just had a bad day, but I read this Rusi Tsui short story that's sort of what set me off about it. And not only was it a bad story, I mean, that's whatever. It won like an award. It won it won the author like a Stegner Fellowship or something like this. And I was like, okay, whatever. But then the prose was bad, and then that didn't even set me off completely. But it was actually another post that another writer had written on Substack, and what he said was, the character in this, let me just take 2 steps back. This is
Sure.
a short story by Rusi Cui, Chinese-American writer, and it's about a Chinese-American woman, millennial, who she has a white boyfriend. She has difficulties at work because of some microaggressions that she experiences or believes that she's experiencing, and then there's some like magical realism on the back end of the story. And it's a short story, whatever. But what really sort of set me off was like this other writer on Substack very astutely had pointed out that this writer was complaining about her life, but she actually had a very good life. She had a very easy job as, something or other in a tech company or something like this. And that sort of was the light bulb moment for me, because it was like, this is a story about a person who, experiences microaggressions. And I'm not totally against the idea of the microaggression. I'm not, a hyper microaggression skeptic, but she portrays her life as being exceptionally victimized, when in fact she actually is, for lack of a better word, exceptionally privileged. And it is this entire pattern of a character and story expressing this happens to make this character very unsympathetic. It makes the writer seem like they're out of touch. And, if this is, reflective of Asian American fiction, that it is, broadly out of touch with, let's say something like the tribulations of Asian Americans generally, then it's not going to reflect very well. It's not a good look for Asian Americans if we're looked at as the people who are out of touch and are complaining from a position of privilege.
Sure. And I have a million questions that I want to go into just off that. I have like 12 in my head, but we do, just for the sake of our schedule, need to move it along. And I don't want to miss the chance for you to mention what you're working on right now. So if you would, just in a couple minutes, tell us what your vision for Asian American lit is. And by that, I mean, what are you working on? What's coming out? Where can people read it? And what is it that makes it yours?
So I have been serializing a novel here on Substack. It's called Age of Peace, and if you visit my profile, Google either Novelglot or Age of Peace, you'll find it on Substack, and it is completed. But it is a realist otherworld novel, so it takes place in an otherworld setting, but it's also a realist setting, and it is about a young teacher, foreign language teacher, who teaches a language called Amargese in a foreign country called Verenia, and then later on in a country called Garamdal. And it takes place in essentially an otherworld, 1980s or 1990s, and he experiences romantic adventures, and also there's a backdrop of political and military conflict and all of this. And
so there is no magical element to this, or would that be a spoiler?
No, there's no
not.
magical
I love it.
element.
I'm geeking out over this. How did you decide that this needed to be a secondary world and not a story told on Earth?
I'll give you I'll give you 2 stories. The fake story is, I wanted a secondary world where I could have complete control over the sort of political, and especially because there are military conflicts in the story, the military dimension of this world, and especially also the history and some of those attendant elements, because I think I didn't want to get in trouble for not knowing, 18th century, X country history correctly. So that's the fake story.
The humility, yes.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
All right. False
humility. But the real story is that I got the idea from watching Game of Thrones. Like, I was like, oh, Game of Thrones is actually it's an otherworld version of essentially medieval Europe.
Yeah.
But not every other world setting doesn't have to take place in a tokenist fantasy world. You can just have another time place that you could set your world in. And when I was a kid, the books that I liked to read, or the vision that I had of the world from National Geographic, from wanting to sort of explore the world was the world in the 1980s and
Yeah.
in the early
Well, it's
1990s.
almost, if anything, it reminds me a little of the world of Disco Elysium, which was originally a novel before it was a video game and then became a huge hit. So maybe we will just need to eventually get the video game adaptation of your story and then it'll take off. John, thank you for jumping on. We do have to jump into our next segment, but we would love to have you back on another time. And we appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, in other litstack / alt lit news, there was a very incendiary essay that went around on Substack. Came out February 20th. It at the time of recording had 537 likes, which is basically the Substack equivalent of like 5 million. Given the Substack readership. So this is to say a huge hit. The title being How the LA Review of Books Destroyed Itself. Now, for me, being an LARB, if not hater, then certainly adversary, this was just like candy to see the title and certainly an interesting read. So to that end, we are very happy to have Tasbeeh Herwees, the writer, the essayist, the Angelino, to talk about the piece. Tasbeeh, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Now, Lillian, you read this recently as well, right?
Yes, I did. Made quite a splash, and it was a very interesting read. I actually had no idea about the origins of the LA Review of Books as a Tumblr in 2011. I think I was fooled, as a lot of people were, by the gravitas of the name.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
yes, very
I also
interesting.
had the sense that it was something that stretched back at least to the 90s. So it was actually kind of inspiring in a way to show how much you can bluff your way in. How familiar were you with the world of the LARB, Tasbeeh, before you decided to start writing this piece?
I was pretty familiar. I think I didn't know the origin story, but I had read a number of pieces in the past about, there was a Hollywood Reporter, a big splashy Hollywood Reporter piece that actually caused a lot of controversy because the picture of the masthead was all, it was very white. And so, and this was during the, Oscars so white, era. And the Hollywood Reporter piece went viral amongst, the LA lit scene and became a point of controversy. But I'd also known them as a reader and a not a contributor because they've in the past I've had editors reach out to me to write for LARB. But as a poor working writer, I never could justify spending, several days and hours to working on a piece that would only garner $100 or at $100 to my income. And I know a lot of people who've worked there. I know a lot of people who've contributed. So I was pretty familiar, I'd say.
So just to make sure I understood, you wrote a piece for the Hollywood Reporter about the
No,
LARB?
no, no, no.
No,
There was a big Hollywood Reporter profile of LARB a couple of years ago.
I see. And
And
it was it a flattering profile?
it was a very flattering profile. It's like the lip
I
scene
see.
mag that all the celebrities are reading in LA.
Wow. Wow, a high watermark, certainly. I guess my next question, before we get into maybe any of the nitty-gritty of the pieces, um, how does everything seem to have gone since you published it, both for you and for them, and like for the relationship, whatever it is?
Yeah, for as far as what I know, LARB has decided not to respond, and someone did leak a Slack message to me, someone who still works there, a Slack message from the, I believe, editor in chief, where she basically acknowledged the Substack piece um, and reiterated that she wouldn't be responding publicly. That the comment that they gave me, which was not much of a comment at all, or at least not much of an explanation, was as far as they'd explain. I'd also heard from a couple of people who were in the process of writing stuff for LARB who've decided to um, cancel their pieces. And I know that they've also reached out to some contributors, particularly Palestinian contributors, asking them, like, we hope this doesn't, we hope this doesn't destroy our relationship. So that's the goss that I got from inside.
Right. It does seem like a big part of this, not to get into that side of it too much, but a big part of your piece hinged on this sort of internal flare-up over like Gaza-related issues within the LARB. Does it seem like before October 7th, they were pretty much all on the same page as far as their politics, and then this was just sort of a schism?
I think it was, I think their politics before October 7th were very much in line with the kind of Samantha Powers, Barack Obama liberal view on Palestine and Israel. They would post like poetry by Palestinians or kind of narrative fiction by Palestinians, but there was never, there was rarely like a direct acknowledgement of the apartheid or the violence that Palestinians experienced. And when they did acknowledge that, there was always, another piece by an Israeli to kind of soften those claims. And that was before October 7th. A couple of people reached out to me and said that they'd recently, over the last year or year and a half, that LARB had solicited very pro-Palestinian pieces and but they were kind of confused, like, how could LARB be anti-Palestinian if they published those pieces or solicited those pieces and allowed people to talk freely about the genocide. And the truth is that they kind of also had the same kind of arc, right? That a lot of newsrooms and a lot of institutions are experiencing now, where the genocide has been kind of just impossible to ignore and impossible to deny. So the people who implemented the ban on Palestinian pro-Palestinian literature are still there. They're still on the board. They're still working there. Just because they've kind of gone with public opinion doesn't really impress me, the timing on that one.
Okay. All right. So if I were to summarize this, and again, I don't want to get into that side of it too much, but they've made what seem like, at least directionally, concessions toward a pro-Palestine or pro-Hamas or whatever you would say voice, and it seems like for most people who were already having a problem with them over this, it doesn't go far enough to appease the concerns. Okay. Does this seem like the essay will actually does this mark sort of a downturn in their cultural cachet or their relevance, or do they seem to be chugging along the same?
I don't think that there was much of a cultural relevance to begin with,
Okay.
which is why they've been able to get away with so much, editorial mismanagement and, paying writers pennies. And not just paying writers pennies, but when it came time to invoice, a number of writers told me that Irene or Medaya would suggest that they should donate their fee back to LARB.
Yeah.
And so they didn't even want to give them that $100 or $150 that they would have received for, a piece that was thousands, if not tens of thousands of words. So, yeah.
So, and I know you touched on this a little in the article, but what do the economics of the LARB look like? Where do they get their funding? Do they lose money every year?
They get funding from a number of donors, and I believe the University of Riverside is still a major donor. And a number of academic institutions. They have a major funding drive every year, just as most nonprofits do, to raise money. But it's unclear. The employees who work there, even the kind of upper management employees, told me that they didn't know where that money was going. They were making, $60K even as upper management, and were chastised when they asked for raises or, supplementary compensation, like healthcare.
It sounded like some of the people you talked to were claiming that there's outright wage theft, that they were being forced to work overtime but not being paid overtime. I was curious if to your knowledge, is there any legal action that's being taken, as a result of your piece, or just, separately?
I can't say if I don't know. But yes, the wage stuff, I did see text messages and emails where one of the editors would reach out to an editor, the one of the senior management would reach out to uh, an editor and ask, why did you bill hours for New Year's? And did you work on New Year's? And then, the person would say, yes, I did work on New Year's, but, and then that person gets nervous, says, I guess I'll just take it off. I'm sorry that that I reported my working hours accurately. And so there was this kind of like soft manipulation that was happening where, they would take the writers out for coffee or lunch for a working, on Saturday or Sunday, when they would be working, but they wouldn't be compensated for that time on the weekend. And these
You
are all contractors.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And it does seem like they're sort of in an unfortunate position where they're not really the biggest of the small fish. They're more like the smallest of the big fish. As an incorporated nonprofit, they're going to be held to all these standards of wage theft, yeah, I mean, the way your article reads, it's almost like how you would read about an expose on like Vanity Fair or something. And yet we're talking about 15 people and $150.
Right.
It's not Condé Nast. So they're sort of wedged in this very difficult space.
Hmm.
What you open with is not I guess you could call it political, but it's not about wages or geopolitics. It's this the pie sit, which is this sort of event that they did, and there's this very saucy image you have as your header. I'm curious how much that sort of drove clicks of this woman in it looks like a leather underwear of some kind with a pie. Um, I I read through your um write up on this, and I wasn't exactly able to tell where you, as the essayist, came down. Where do you come down on the whole commingling of the sort of raunchy stuff with the journal stuff? Are you pro? Are you anti? Are you neutral?
For me, that anecdote was meant to kind of illustrate how out of touch and kind of uh, old fashioned and, outdated this institution is, that they are not, when they do hire new blood or younger writers or editors, that they're not allowing them to, explore and to kind of, how do you say, that kind of like moral panic about the sex worker. It's really, really outdated, right? Like, it's not, um as one editor says, there's a lot of poets and writers in LA who are sex workers because they're, for whatever reasons, that's the only kind of work that they're able to acquire. So for me, that was more about just kind of how antiquated the institution was, and how these people who've been running this magazine for however many years, more than a decade, have kind of refused to hand over the reins to someone younger, or someone with a fresh perspective.
Interesting. Yeah, I certainly consider myself, I don't know, I guess I'm pro allowing sex workers to participate in literary journals. But I know, there's another world where someone could write a piece like this, and the sort of crossing of the boundaries into that sort of stuff could be, a mark against. So I was just curious.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious as well about you as a writer. I know you've written for various publications. You also now write, like so many of us, on Substack. Your blog is No Bad Days. Um, how did you decide to take the leap on that, and how do you manage to sustain it? I mean, this was not a paywalled article.
Yeah. Well, I have a day.
Sure. Oh, I think we
One
might.
keeps
calling you. Popular.
Yes,
Okay.
someone keeps calling me. I'm sorry. Um,
No problem. No
I
problem.
I do have a day job as a copywriter. I do copy for a number of organizations. And I started the Substack because I couldn't find a job in a full-time writing job, right? Like I could not find a full-time writing job. So I was hoping to kind of, while I have a job, to kind of build my own thing that could hopefully one day sustain my lifestyle and pay my rent. That's not happening yet. So in the meantime, I will continue to have a day job. But hopefully one day I'll have enough paid subscribers or content to be able to do that full time.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And I don't know. Obviously, this blew up, and it's got a fairly inflammatory title. How the LA Review of Books destroyed itself. Um, I guess I could ask in what sense you mean that, but I also sort of, we all understand this is a little bit of directional hyperbole,
Right.
as happens in the um, essay business. Do you feel like you have taken away from the success that you're going to keep digging in this direction? Is this something you want to mine again based on how this has gone?
No, I think the story's been told. Maybe in 5 years or however many years, if there's no, change, or if the LARP still exists, there's potential to dig back in. It is a smaller organization, and ideally, it becomes a bigger organization and does pay writers and can employ people at a livable salary, and ideally, it does become kind of a home for LA writers who right now don't necessarily have a home, at least one that feels, of their community. LARP doesn't feel of their community. It's all these kind of older writers and editors who live outside of LA or don't participate in the local literary community, or at least not the, at least not the younger literary community. So ideally, I hope they implement some changes and it gets you know up back, and that they become a more impressive institution. And I'm not trying to my goal isn't to try and destroy LARB myself. I think this is fully what they've done to themselves, right? Like when you screw over writers over and over and over and over again, it doesn't matter how big you are or how small you are. You have to be honest about how you might be participating in this kind of, um, you know, the economic inequality that exists in our industry.
Did you ever have a moment as you were drafting this where you asked yourself, am I okay with burning this bridge? Or did you always know that that was something that was fine?
Yeah, like I said, they've kind of burned the bridge first for me. When you come to me and you ask, can you write, thousands of words for $100?
Yeah.
That to me is an insult. That to me is they're the ones who burned that bridge. I didn't burn that bridge. And they burned the bridge with the editors that they worked for, that worked for them, and the writers who worked for them and wrote for them. So as far as I'm concerned, I simply told a story that was true. Um, and I hope, the purpose of most journalism is, and I write that at the end, that I care about, I wrote this story because I care about LA's literary community. I'm born and raised in LA. I've always admired I grew up admiring these kind of institutions, like, the New York Review of Books or the Paris Review. And I've always hoped that there was something like that here in Los Angeles to kind of sustain writers here. But there's not. And LARB wants to pretend that it is, but it it shouldn't, because they can't. They it is not.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Certainly motivationally and it takes a lot of agency to do the grunt work, the field work of interviewing as many people as you did. It takes a lot of agency even when you're on a deadline, and so even more so when you're just working for yourself. So to that end, I think this is exactly the kind of reported work that hopefully will keep um, indie lit going in America. That was about all that I had to ask, and I wanted just to thank you again for coming on to discuss the piece.
Thank you.
Listener, if you want to read it, again, it's called How the LA Review of Books Destroyed Itself, one of many pieces to read for free on No Bad Days. Lillian, was there anything else you wanted to get into before we said goodbye to Tasbeeh?
I just wanted to say it was a great piece of writing. I think it's very unusual to see on someone's personal Substack a reported piece like that, and I think it is something that Substack could use more of. So
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing your next pieces.
Thank you.
Very exciting Substack news. Someone managed to get money to come out of Grindr without having to do any of the things that would normally be required to make money off of Grindr. So for that alone, we have to give something of a round of applause. One Mr. Russell Sprout, an incomparable poster on Substack, basically a few weeks ago decided to just mercilessly go in on Grindr, the brand, for showing up and posting things on notes like "Who playing with they worm," and basically said, you know, uh, the exact quote was, "This is the worst corporate attempt at Substack I've ever seen. Holy shit, is this garbage? They've completely misread the Substack audience. 5,000 words on which Roman emperor was the gayest by EOD Monday, or leave forever." Now, I like this. 278 other people besides me like this. This was a hilarious post. And in probably the finest example of negging I have ever seen in my entire life, this somehow turned into Grindr actually asking Russell Sprout to write the article, presumably for money. So with us to talk about this experience and his career more broadly, we have Russell Sprout. How are you, Russell?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking, Cairo.
And I believe you are located on neither coast, but somewhere deep within these beautiful United States. Is that correct?
Well, I'm located on a third coast, a fresh coast. I'm calling you straight out of Chicago, Illinois.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Nice that you've settled in.
Some call it the best coast.
I would agree.
Wow. You guys might need to fight for third with Texas. They try to claim third, so one of you is going to have to be fourth.
I feel like that's still the Atlantic coast. Just like reaches down in there.
There's an argument there. Yeah, there is. Okay, that maybe that's a fight we can have on a future episode. Maybe John Goo can come back to fight for third coast status. But yeah, so I take it that you were not trying to get a job when you posted this. You were just shooting from the hip, posting from the heart. Is that a correct read?
That is entirely correct. Look, I was not trying to really make any money off of writing. I never do at any point. As I have no artistic aims, I have no material aims. I am really just trying to have a blast on the platform, as I tend to do. And I was having a blast mercilessly mocking a corporate brand, and they responded by reaching out to me and asking me if I wanted to do the very jokey article that I proposed. And then I did it.
Yes, which you can go find, by the way. That's the end of the saga. He posted it, and it's good, although what you would expect. And I actually do have maybe, I don't know, it's a little controversial when you get down into the gayest of the Roman emperors, but we don't need to go on too much of a Roman history dive. I want to say I think you might be the only person on Substack without artistic ambitions, which leads to the question, why are you here?
I don't know. Broadly, I don't know. Specifically, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I exist. I float through the world, and I experience whatever I can. And I started posting on Substack more or less as like this is a better social media than the various other social media platforms I was using. I wrote my first article on a lark. That article was, "Is Mike Wazowski Jewish or Polish?" And it went viral. It's sitting at about 3,200 likes right now. About 10 times that in views. Not that I'm counting. And you have a hit like that, you have to continue, is my point of view. People seem very
Right.
receptive. They enjoy it. They tell me that they read it out loud to other people and they laugh. I'm flattered. I want to continue.
Do you have groupies yet? Maybe vegetarian groupies?
Well, I post quite a bit about my wife, and I think
Okay,
that
that'll scare
dispels
them
most
away.
of that.
Okay.
Yeah, that first post, the Monsters Inc. post, is is a good post. It's sort of astonishing for a first post, where I feel like everyone else on Substack who does have artistic ambitions are just like so in their head about what they're posting that it's like some just awful shit that gets 0 likes, and you just do that again and again for like 4 months, and then you start to get a few likes, but you're just right out of the gate with the thousands. That was very impressive.
Yes, it's a real testament to the failure of trying hard at something. If you put no effort in, it really works for you. That's the lesson that I've learned.
I feel like this might be underselling your sort of natural connection to the muse. I think that the muse of shitposting is clearly speaking through you. You know, you've been touched in this way. You're, dare I say, mogging all the effort cells in this regard.
I'll take that, Cairo.
We got to keep it a little Gen Z on here. So okay, you have this thing. I doubt you're going to become a staff writer for Grindr, right? This is sort of a one and done.
This, unless I have a similarly good idea, is a one and done. I don't anticipating having something that's in their wheelhouse. When I first reached out to them and I was like, I'm serious about this. We threw around some other ideas and I was like, no, I really, this is what I want to write. If I'm going to write this pretty much no matter what, um, bring me along or not. And they were like, hey, we're flexible enough to do it. We're trying things out here. Let's try this out.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm looking at what you've written. You actually do have a fairly sizable amount of posts, and you're hitting like just layup after layup on here. This is incredible. This is incredible. What a career. What is your day life? What are you allowed to say about what you do that has prepared you to be a shitpost essayist?
The answer is going to be very disappointing. I have a full-time job. I work as a software engineer. And I live in Chicago with my wife, who is a lawyer, and that is that's our life. We go out, grab drinks with friends. We have a cat. Relatively recent arrivals to the city. I live a very normal life, Cairo. There's no hidden mystery here.
That sounds a lot like me, except you guys do things that make money. But other than that, we're kindred spirits, and I guess you get more likes on your posts than me too. So I'm
Yes,
I'm in
but
the shadow
you
of
have
greatness
more
on
artistic
all fronts.
merit.
Okay,
I look at my
Lillian,
own work.
you're a Chicagoan as well, right?
Yes, ish. I mean, suburban Chicago.
Is there like a hierarchy to being from Chicago? Like, is he Chicago mogging you by being in the city? Or is it kind of neighborhood by neighborhood?
No, I mean, it's when you meet someone who's not from Chicago, you say you're from Chicago. You don't say you're from Evanston, Illinois, because no one really knows what that is. But yeah, I mean, I did live in Hyde Park, on the south side of Chicago for 5 years, so I have like some cred, I guess.
You know,
Pyro,
I think
I'll give you a
Chicago.
moment of sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll give you a moment of insight here. Lillian can play a game that many people play in Chicago called What High School Did You Go To? This is a common game. The game is played by asking, what high school did you go to? And then you learn various things about that person.
Okay.
I imagine, Lillian, what high school did you go to?
Evanston Township High School.
Yeah, so that, first it tells you that you grew up in Evanston, which then tells you several other things about Lillian.
It also tells me Evanston is a township, but
yes.
Okay, yes, continue.
So she has more cred than me, a transplant to the city who cannot play that game.
Ah, okay. You did not go to any Chicago high school. You moved there.
No.
Well, I have to say, Chicago doesn't have a ton of things that we, I think, out here immediately think of it for. I mean, meat, I guess, but also comedy. I mean, Chicago is a famously funny city, and so I think you're probably doing your adopted city credit by being funny online. I would say, Mr. Sprout.
Thank you.
So where do you go from here? I mean, banger after banger. Are you just going to get sick of winning?
Look, Cairo, I'll tell you, before I made the Mike Wazowski post and took myself in this direction, I had wanted to start a newsletter for a bit. The vision for that was like a slapstick version of those AI blogs. Like I would make a really bad product and present it as if it was hot shit. And like it wouldn't work or it would be obviously flawed in some sort of way. And I was trying to mine that for comedy. And then the Mike Wazowski post came to me in the middle of the workday in about 2 hours. And
2 hours on the clock.
Yeah, 2 hours on the clock that I was getting paid for, but not by Substack.
All right.
And has since brought me in a wildly different direction. I still think from time to time, like I would have called it like elevated software or something like that, elevated technologies. I still think there's comedy to be mined there. But I think just keeping it loose and letting things come to me in a serious way. I was joking about not putting any effort into anything before, but in a serious way, taking it easy, not overthinking things. I think that is a path to success on the platform.
I do think that if you were to launch that original concept now, as AI is on the verge of making, most software companies superfluous, or so they say, you might be accused of kind of dancing on the graves there, and it becomes a little less funny.
Yeah, it's a little too serious. I think you're right there.
Yeah, I would say if I was hitting numbers like you, I would change nothing. Like, yeah, it's all like it's not like you crafted this shtick in like a focus group, like you're just all in the wrist laying them out there. You know what I mean? So just write it as long as you can would be my inclination.
It's funny that you say you're pointing to the numbers doing well. Sometimes I worry that I have become subservient to it. Have I become audience captured?
You probably have. I mean, which is just to say, if the Wazowski post did not explode, I doubt I would see half of these other follow-ups. So already, the success is training you as you work with it, but there's still you in there.
I'll take it.
And that's my completely outside layman's take. I don't know. That could not be true at all. How does the wife feel about this second life you lead?
Very positive. She is incredibly supportive. She reads all of my posts before I post them. And it's funny. Sometimes she'll get bored at work and she will open up my Substack profile and she will like go through the notes that I've posted that day. And if I haven't posted any, she'll text me, "You haven't posted anything today. What's going on?"
That's
what happened?
So cute, man. Talk about a good, loving manager. We could all be so lucky.
No, she's very supportive. I'm incredibly fortunate. And it also gives me leeway to be like, "Oh, sorry, babe, I'm writing an article right now." And she's like, "Oh, yes, please continue doing that at the expense of something else." She's lovely. I truly am the luckiest man.
Amid all the drama, it's very good to have a feel-good story to close out our season premiere. Lillian, was there anything else you wanted to ask Mr. Sprout before we send him on his way?
I was curious. So, you say that this has all been very effortless and just sort of chasing the fun. But did you have the idea of who the gayest Roman emperor was just like off the top of your head, or was this something that you had to research?
I knew it was Elagabalus. I have enough of a background in Roman history to know that it was Elagabalus and that it would be really between Hadrian and Elagabalus. It was going back through consulting the primary sources that helped me elucidate that argument, but I knew what the argument was going to be before I made it. What I didn't know as much were some of the exploits that Nero did. I just, for some reason, was not as familiar with the life of Nero. Mostly, I think, because a lot of it is very distasteful. And that was, I think, the primary area where I was learning new things about a Roman emperor for the first time for the article. But I knew it was Elagabalus. I had enough of a background in that from college to know that it was Elagabalus.
You know something, I would, just to throw a wrench in our happy little segment, I'm going to disagree with you. Now, again, you've got the grinder money and I don't. But, if we're just going to be two straight guys arguing about gay Roman emperors, here's the thing. I think, obviously, they were both very into men, meaning Hadrian and Elagabalus.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the transgender, transsexual aspirations actually maybe throw a wrench in it, because if you go, oh, okay, this is someone who is extremely committed to becoming a woman to the point where they really identified as a woman who is attracted to men, this like wraps all the way back around to having like a straight argument.
But was he a woman, or was that slander from his political enemies?
Yeah, I mean, you could say the same thing about a lot of the Nero claims you threw in there.
You could, but the Nero claims do not lead him to be the gayest if they're not true.
Yeah, so I'm just saying Hadrian, he's got this daddy energy, undeniably a cis man, undeniably extremely gay, almost like probably killed over his gayness, if you go down that. I don't know. There's an argument for both, but I do see why you went the way you went.
I respect the opinion, and I could argue about this for a while. Like, we could go back and forth for a bit. I am not going to take this in that direction.
All right. Well, ultimately, you wrote the article. You got the likes. You got the contract. You did the research. You got your little taste of, you're actually probably the first commissioned essayist ever by Grindr, and here you are, happily married to a woman. So
yep. It's strange, it's bizarre. They have commissioned a couple of essays before me, but not from, I suppose I could call myself a Substack personality. God help me.
Yeah, I don't want to compare you to, you definitely have forebears on Twitter, but I don't want to compare you by name because it's kind of a cursed crown.
Yeah, it's auspicious to have this sort of following, I suppose. I am the first, like, here is a personality who is on this platform and nowhere else, and like not, I don't even know if I would call myself a writer, like not a writer that they've commissioned. They've commissioned other essays, and they've all been like relatively established authors.
Right. Well, I look forward to knowing. Do we get to know if anyone else has reached out to you for an essay? The
sponsors are not rolling in. I am
Republic of Letters, or anything been in your DMs?
No, nobody has reached out to me for anything, Cairo. Let me tell you.
They should.
It's very
I'm going to let you get about your evening. This looks like a very comfortable setup, Mr. Sprout. Oh, yes. What are you drinking there, if I may ask?
That is some Sancerre.
Sancerre. Okay, well, you enjoy. There is always so much happening on litstack. There's always so much happening in alt-lit. People are writing. They're very prolific. They're in the prime of their lives at any age, and they're just getting it out there. It's almost overwhelming. So I do want to take the chance before we end the show to give a shout out to some of the authors on our radar who have books either just come out or are coming out in the next few weeks. This is by no means comprehensive, but we want to point you in some directions if you want to take a look. Frank Kidd, who's been on the show, has a book coming out called Once Upon a Time in Argentina. It is a sort of a modern day Western pulp adventure. But when I say pulp, I risk underselling his depth. I got to read an arc. I'm about a couple chapters in, and he's really just a crackling writer. So Frank Kidd, Kidd, I personally do recommend him. Brady, I believe it's Putsky, excuse me if I'm saying that wrong, of the Frank and Brady Show. That's his podcast co-host. Also has a book coming out called My Sweet Esmeralda. which is, I believe, another contemporary crime book. Ross Barkan himself obviously has Call Us, which is his second in his trilogy of what he himself calls great American novels. So certainly an interesting approach to self-branding and ambitious, and he's doing it. He's putting in the reps. So we'll see how Call Us lands when it comes out in April. Natasha Jukovsky, who is a very spunky author. If that's a microaggression against women, I will choose another word. But she and I first met arguing on notes, and I decided to be the bigger man and follow her. And I've really enjoyed what she has to say. So follow your argument partners, ladies and gentlemen. You never know when it'll lead to expanding your horizons. She has a book called Medium Rare, a somewhat satirical, dark basketball novel, literary novel, whatever that means. And she is on tour right now. Unreal Press, who I guess you'd call our enemy. They publish notoriously under-edited pieces, often attacking futurist letters. They have a book called Carbon Pages out. It's a series of plays. So let's hope the author did his editing well, because I know that Unreal Press sure didn't do it. John Gu, as you know, has Age of Peace. His very, I don't even know what you call this. Indulgence, not the word. Lillian, how would you describe how he described his novel?
I guess, so it made me think of two things. Where he has this secondary world that's like basically alternate universe Europe. Made me think that there's not a lot of alternate universe Europes out there. And it reminded me of Ursula Le Guin, who created this fake European country called Ursinia. And Princess Diaries created a fake European country.
Yeah, I think this
bold.
actually...
I would think it sounded bold and ambitious.
Yes, I at the time in the segment I compared it to Disco Elysium, and for me that's like very high praise, because I think that's a masterful piece of writing. I think this was almost more of a thing in the 19th century. There was some sort of, and I'm forgetting the word, somebody in the comments will know. There was one ubiquitous fictional Central European country that was almost like, it was like a public domain plot device. And anytime any writer like wanted to have a made up duke or baron or event, and they didn't want to single out a country, they would all use this same country. So that's maybe worth a Wikipedia dive if you're curious. I can't remember it right now, but that's kind of the roundup for fiction. We got a bunch of other mentions when we put out a call. J. Daniel Sawyer has a book called Beneath the Hypnotic Toad, which I don't know too much about, but that's coming out soon. Beyond that, there were more than we could even possibly get into. So even though litstack seems like 100 people, it's at least 200, and half of them have novels coming out. Yes, that is it. We will keep you abreast of what's going on with litstack and alt-lit. Lillian, how do you feel about the new format starting off season 2?
I thought we got a nice cross-section of litstack for the first try. There's what was occurring to me is that there's just so much more out there. Like there's all these, it's this whole ecosystem of I guess like niche micro celebrities who like aren't really celebrity. It's all just people who somehow know each other thanks to the algorithm, and little dramas popping off all the time, and it's hard to keep up with.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like there's your brain wants to be bimodal about just like a popular person and a celebrity, but it's almost like a smooth gradient, like it's hard to bifurcate that.
Yeah, I think I hope we'll do more of these, because there is just so much more to cover. Especially, we got to keep the people updated who are not as terminally online as we are.
Exactly. I think the real test is going to be when you and I have family members or friends who don't spend all their time on Substack notes. Listen to this. If they find it enjoyable, if they find it comprehensible, in an ideal world, if they even then go follow one of these folks based on what they heard, I think that'll be the real test. So we'll have to see. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for listening to the Futurist Letters show. Thank you for joining us for season 2. This is going to be a lot of fun, and we're not going to be beholden to a schedule, but we're going to try and do this enough to stay current. So we will see you around the tubes. Please, once again, follow the Lillian review of books. You can find Lillian Wang Solonic on Substack. Get her to 1,000, and myself, just Google Cairo Smith. You can find me everywhere I am. So until next time, have a good one.